Great. So we've got the requisite number of chairs, which is a good start, isn't it? Brilliant. Okay. So obviously we've met everybody. Mark, we haven't met you. So maybe would you mind just explaining a little bit more about Maximon and the work that you do in your fund?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mark. I'm a serial tech entrepreneur. Started my first internet company back in '99. And since then, built and exited several companies, mainly in the tech field. I explored Bitcoin in 2012, was involved in several crypto companies. So as we heard, the convergence of crypto and longevity is maybe also represented in myself. And then 4 years ago, we initiated Longevity Investors, a format for investors to get more money and funding for longevity companies. And 3.5 years ago, together with my partners, we launched Maximon. Maximon is a venture studio / company builder, meaning we build and finance from scratch companies in the longevity field. We give them up to 10 million Swiss francs. And so far, we launched 5 companies, roughly 110 people, all in the non-biotech space, like Avea, supplement company. Clinic, we're launching literally this month in Zurich. And yeah, we want to literally make longevity tangible for the broader masses.
Great, thank you, Mark. And Kenneth, or is it Kenneth or Ken?
Either will work.
Okay. Well,
pay me enough, you can call me anything.
Okay. Could you just explain your organization's background as well, please?
Well, I guess a couple of things. First of all, chronologically, I'm 81 years old. I think that probably that means that in this conference on longevity, I'm the only one that you'll see on the stage who can claim to have achieved longevity, and I think that brings a little credibility to some of the things I say. Viva Sparkle is our website, mostly a hobby type of website, because people keep saying, how do you do it? And I try and put a bit of the information there. But the Viva Sparkle is also about life. And you really want to live it with sparkle. And so that's why we're Viva Sparkle. I'm a seed investor in a number of biotech startups, and that sort of motivates my involvement in this field. And I also should say that the investments I make are into companies that I think can help me with my personal longevity. And there's many of you in this audience who have helped me, and so thank you.
Great, Ken, thank you. And just to understand the context of the fund that you work with, are you a venture capital investor, angel investor? How do you work?
Usually working at the seed level, angel level. Very interested, as I say, in companies that can help me live longer. So I have a very personal approach to these things. Most of the talks this morning have been very macro. I'm very micro. I'm not particularly altruistic. I believe that if I can succeed, that will have a spin-off effect to you.
Great. Well, thank you.
Are we allowed to ask other panelists questions?
Oh, I would love that. Yeah, I mean, please do, Michael. Go.
What's your personal regimen? You look great.
Oh, the most important thing is nutrition. But when I say nutrition, I think in a very global sense. It's not only what you eat, it's what you consume in the way of liquids. It's what you breathe. It's what you put on your skin. Anything that you put into your biome is going to have an impact. I'm very concerned about toxicity, so I focus personally on living in places where I don't breathe filthy air. I'm on the sea. I'm in the country. I believe in a fairly straightforward vegan diet. I do eat a certain amount of fish. I drink water. I want it to be as clear as it can possibly be, as pure as it can possibly be. And so one of the investments I've made, which is outside of direct biotech, is in a company called Avea, which has a biomimetic equivalent of in a kidney to allow water to be purified in the sense that the kidney purifies. One of the problems that we have with the liquids that we consume is our kidney will clean them. But before they get to the kidney, they do damage. And so we really want to purify that water through a similar biomimetic filter type arrangement to get that purity. So that's the big thing. I think it's also important to do a reasonable amount of exercise. Don't go terribly overboard. Don't hurt yourself. Get your 10,000 steps a day in. One of the therapies that I took a couple of years ago was from Minicircle. The follistatin gene therapy had an incredible impact on me. Going to the therapy, I was walking through Miami, pulling my suitcase, stopping 2 or 3 times. Now when I'm home, I typically run about 1.5 miles. I couldn't do that 2 years ago. So it's a mixture of things like that. And as I say, there's so many in this community who are coming up with these therapies. If you got something, give me a call. I'm interested.
Great. Yeah, perfect. Well, I think that we can all benefit from that guidance. And let's bring us around to the subject matter of what we're talking about today. So obviously we've got some varying models and mechanisms for fundraising. Mark, you probably represent through Maximon the most traditional route where you're getting LPs, family offices and so on, putting money into your fund. So just before we go into some of the new techniques, how did you find those LPs and how easy was it for you to get their money to start building your fund? Because that's the route that most people are still pursuing at the moment.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in our case, because me and my partners already were active as entrepreneurs and already sold a few companies ourselves, we put 10 million of our own money into the fund. So everybody knew that we have some skin in the game as well, which helps, right? And we literally cross-financed the whole operation out of our own pocket. So I think even as an investor, you have to have this entrepreneurial mindset, meaning you're fully aligned with your investors. And then we have now a little bit more than 30 million from external parties. These are mainly individuals, family offices, mainly Swiss ones, so literally friends of ours. And now literally, yeah, we're in the process of getting more kind of institutional money into the field. And I think from a fundraising perspective, and that's something I think many in the room and also on stage know, we're literally in one of the worst times ever. I mean, I'm doing tech since '99, and I think I never saw such an extreme constraint when it comes to funding and fundraising, which is bad. On the other side, as we all know, now you really have the people who are passionate about building something. So hopefully we see better times, and then with more funding and the right people who went through all these tough times right now, we will hopefully also see many successful companies, right? But funding, I think at the moment, unrelated if you're doing it for a fund, for a startup, for a later stage in this field, is extremely tough. And if you read the news, everybody talks about longevity, yeah, that's right. But then we also saw it in your slides, right? I mean, the numbers, the hard facts, the funding is just a tiny fraction when you look at other more established industries in the field.
Yeah, so I guess that you've addressed a couple of points there. One of the key ones I think that came out of what you're just saying is the institutional engagement as well, because obviously family offices, they can see the benefit of the returns, but likewise they will benefit perhaps from some of the organizations and therapeutics that they are actually investing in. The patriarchs and matriarchs of these established family offices are running out of runway themselves. But in terms of the institutional side of things, Michael, you're through BCG, I would imagine that you are speaking perhaps to pension funds or to some of these larger organizations that are kind of thinking about healthcare and biotech, and everybody's firing off into AI and all the things that the herd are moving towards. What is your perception of the more established, deeper mechanisms in the financial industries?
Yeah. So I think we're living right now in an inverse bubble, and which is, I think the market is making right now inefficient decisions on deployment of capital. I think more capital should be coming into this space. Now, a little bit of it is constraint of good things to invest in, which I see. But I think there's also some level of irrational aversion. You always have to ask yourself, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm seeing things that others, aren't, and I'm the one that is incorrect. But I think I've looked at it deeply enough to, I don't think that's the case. And so you say, well, there's a bubble here. The hardest thing to predict is when bubbles break. Because, I mean, we've seen, we know there are periods of irrationality in markets. What we don't have is a good science of when irrational periods stop. We know they eventually stop. And the longer it takes for them to stop, the bigger, there's something called catastrophe theory, like the bigger the break is once it finally gets fixed. So There's another analogy here, which is merger waves. You see mergers come in waves, and there's, again, not great theory as to why this is the case, but it's sort of the dam bursting catastrophe theory is the best kind of version of it that folks have out there. So I believe we're going to see a massive change in kind of the institutional level interest in this space. Mm-hmm. What I don't know is how long it's going to take for that to change.
Yeah. And I guess it is those cycles of where, for example, I remember events probably about 4 years ago where there were some large insurers corporately supporting those events, but I guess they've kind of moved off. They've got other diversions and so on. So yes, I guess calling it's going to be one of those challenges for all of us. But I guess maybe just moving around slightly, Sebastian, looking at your slides, you mentioned that you got a small ticket size. I think it was at 5K was the entry point for.
Yeah, if you want to invest in our angel list rolling fund structure, it's a 5K minimum check size. There's no maximum check size, of course, so send me a message. Yeah, and we've invested in 30 companies in the last 2 years. We mostly focus on regenerative medicine and sort of more radical approaches. So, the first company I founded is a small molecule company, Samsara Therapeutics, on autophagy enhancement. And so what I know best is small molecule drug discovery, but I think that the effects of small molecules are going to be limited, right? So maximum effect size that we see with small molecule, like rapamycin plus metformin or acarbose, it's like 20% or so. And we're in it for the stuff that will double human lifespan or extend it indefinitely.
Yep.
And so for that, we really believe in gene and cell therapy. We can rewrite the code of life if we solve the gene therapy delivery problem, and we can eventually, in principle, regrow whole organs. Mm-hmm. One thing we can't regrow is the brain because the connections ostensibly give us our identity. But there are people working on crazy stuff like head transplant. I'm not sure if we're there yet. But also just cloning.
If I may just ask you, in relation to the financing economics, is what I'm very interested in. So you've got small ticket investors, and of course, when we'll talk with the crypto world, where of course, again, you've got smaller ticket investors. It's more about the participation that I'm interested in, the profile of the investors, not necessarily what you do with the capital. So how is that working for you? I mean, are you finding that people? I mean, AngelList is providing you with is it a SPV model that you run, or how does that work?
Yeah, so there's been a sort of revolution in early stage financing, and it started in the Bay Area, as you might expect. One of the reasons that the Bay Area is really successful is there are a ton of angel investors, right? Like Google got started with a 100K check, and that investor famously didn't even ask the valuation or anything, just wrote them the check, and the rest is history. So that's something that the Bay Area uniquely has that a lot of other hubs did not have. I mean, it's growing elsewhere. So I think the valley of death is the earliest stages of capital. We're very optimistic to see early stage financing growing.
Yep. So people are coming in with smaller checks, and obviously you have some bigger checks as well. But you're using that as a dynamic mechanism to just keep the doors open on your fund. And presumably, are you topping up and deploying that capital as you go as a rolling point, or are you getting to you're raising a target destination for your fund?
Yeah, exactly. So we have a 10-year fund structure, but conveniently we can raise capital every quarter. So it's more flexible. It kind of tracks the markets, which can be bad in a down market, but in an up market, it's dynamic. And we've had a lot of successful entrepreneurs as LPs, family offices, et cetera. The Kim Jong-un family of North Korea has been very keen, very mission-oriented, so we're very happy to have them on board. They love our work, yeah, it's tremendous. That's a joke, by the way, I'm just joking.
Great, so Todd, can I just ask you, you shared very much the Vita DAO structure, which is very collegiate. I mean, the community is fantastic, right? I mean, you've got a lot of people in the community. How does it work in relation to the dynamic? Is it the biggest coins owners? Are they the ones that get the bigger voting rights? How does that work?
So in terms of governance, yes. But I actually want to come back to something. How easy is it to get funding from the crypto world?
Yeah.
First off, it's very much like crowdsourcing. But what's particularly unique about the crypto world is most crypto people are used to engaging in buying tokens where they will make 10x, 15x, 20x returns. And so one of the things that's happening, and it's just becoming more recent, is crypto realizes that if they fund early stage longevity research and create a community around it, they're actually able to see these returns. So, for example, I mentioned Vita RNA and Vita Fast tokens. These are small, $100,000, $200,000 checks, and next thing you're building multi-million-dollar funding communities around it. Yeah. So this is a really interesting way. And now that you're seeing two things, regulation is starting to normalize. So here in Europe, MiCA, the SEC approved Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum ETFs are coming. So it's becoming not the Wild West, it's becoming a lot more acceptable. Pfizer Ventures cut us a check. And so, we're deploying funds from Pfizer Venture as part of the BetaDAO community. They have tokens. Right? So it's changing. And so there is money out there. Actually, there's quite a lot of money out there. The question is, the crypto investor that wants to be involved wants to know how they're going to get the same kind of returns that they see elsewhere. And you're starting to see more real-world assets, and biotech just happens to be an asset.
Yeah, and Francesca, you had a raise of hands earlier, and obviously, by nature of this community, some of them are more experimental individuals. So you're seeing more a prevalence now of people with their own crypto accounts and able to participate in things. Are they from that period of time in the crypto world, or are you seeing more mainstream people coming in now? And then, in the case of Sebastian, for example, where you've got people that want to invest capital into a new market. They're still small cap investors, but they're more, let's put it, more traditional people in the way that they approach their own personal finance.
Right, good question. So, excuse me, one of the most important aspects is actually having the right tools, right? So in order for us to interact with the Web3 space and being able to access the funding, we have to have a wallet. And if we don't learn this kind of, right, how to utilize these tools, then we wouldn't be able to access the funding. And which is number one. Secondly, what I wanted to mention is now that the crypto community is mainstream, and maybe this is happening as well in the longevity field, the one thing that we want to keep on track is why we created this space, right? The ethos, the values that we want to bring as also when we make investments, right? So yes, we want to create incentives for everyone, but also we want to create something different. Mm-hmm. Because if we create the same system that we had before, then we're not creating anything different. And what that means to have a space that is inclusive. That means that to have a space and invest in education as well, and help on board the people that perhaps might have difficulty into tapping into this new system. Otherwise, we're gonna leave out the majority of the population, and this is kind of like what's happening a bit in the crypto space as well, perhaps in the longevity field. If I am an outsider, right, I don't come to conferences such as this one, meeting places, or go to pop-up cities like Vitalia, and I don't know about it, where do I get these therapies? Where do I get these services? How do I tap into these fundings opportunities? So in this way, upgrading also and creating a hub, both in the network and in the physical space, where people can reach out and connect. It's a way to help connect all of these initiatives together. So.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, I guess that deploying capital is what it's all about at the end of the day. And Mark, you mentioned that you're more what I would term longevity now focused. You're looking at things like supplements and clinics and so on. How do you, as an investor, balance your perspective on the longevity industry? Is it as binary as that, where we've got a lot of biotech conversations happening? Do you sort of say, well, that's not our piece, or are you looking more broadly at the longevity field?
Yeah, I mean, for us, maybe I can give a concrete example. We launched our first company, Avea, the supplement one I mentioned, in March 2 years ago, so a little bit more than 2 years ago. And last month we did roughly $2 million US of monthly revenue, so literally in I don't know, 27 months from zero of 2 million monthly revenue. So that shows a little bit, unrelated if it's supplement or longevity, with our model and with how you call it, low-hanging fruits or non-biotech, you can really generate successful, profitable, the company is now profitable, by the way, companies. And I think that's, at least in my view, something which was, from an entrepreneur and investor perspective, missing in the field, right? Because you have so many exciting moonshots and science, but it's always in the short, mid to very long-term future, especially the things you're focusing on, right? Which is great, but I think that's one of the reasons why many investors still look at the space as something which is not investable, because they don't go for the moonshots. And it's great that you have the Bezoses and Altmans of the world funding these exciting long-term companies, but I think for the industry, we need more money from boring traditional VCs. And I can tell you, when we announced that Avea became profitable literally after 2 years, we had so many, and now we don't need money anymore, naturally, so many VCs reaching out to us, and they said, hey, finally we see a European longevity company which is creating revenues and is becoming profitable, so we have to really closer look into the space, right? So that's not just great for us, I think that's great for the whole industry. And that's why this short-term approach, or the low-hanging fruit approach, is, I think, crucial to ultimately also succeed with the long-term vision of the whole industry. And that's why I think it's great. I mean, now, even on this panel, it's such a broad approach from literally crowdfunding to 5K initial ticket to the more traditional one, but I think everybody's in for the same ultimate reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just maybe moving over, Todd, to the longer tail of the R&D development associated with the work you're doing. I noticed that I saw Novos up on your screen there. So just to understand that, because I remember you did a crowdfunding, I believe, for Humanity, which is a digital app. So is VitaDAO looking at both near-term as well as long-term opportunities?
I think we're kind of expanding a spectrum. So I think, in one sense, at the very base, we're kind of with Sebastian, right? We're looking for those long-term things. But there's a recognition that you have to feed the dopamine hit. You need some returns, and you need some things sooner. So whether it's as an investor trying to get a return earlier, or whether it's as a user, you want to look at things like supplements, look at the things that we can do now, but recognize that there are moonshots that need funding, and they need to be done. And coming back to kind of something Mark said, one of the things that is happening from the crypto side is that, traditional biotech is 10, 15 years, right, before you see a drug to market. A lot of VC funds, they have a 3 to 5 year investment thesis, right? They want to get in, get their money out maybe in 5 years. Biotech investors tend to be a bit longer. But one of the things that the crypto ecosystem provides is the ability to liquefy biotech investment. So you can come in and buy tokens in a project within VitaDAO, for example, stick around for 5 years, sell your tokens. The next guy comes in, right? So you can adjust your risk appetite from the early stage to the later. And I think so VitaDAO is trying to cover the whole spectrum here.
Yeah, and we haven't got much time to talk about secondary markets and so on, but that's very interesting that you got that liquidity as soon as you're in the game, which is fascinating.
And it can be done at a lab level, or it can be done at a particular researcher. It's almost like a little mini fan club around either an asset or a researcher or a lab or a company.
Yeah. Kenneth?
I'd like to just change the focus a little bit. We're talking here mostly about bringing money in. The focus should be on delivering to humanity. We need to speed up the delivery process, the processing of getting these therapies out to humans. I think we have to stop spending a lot of money bribing government agencies for approval. I think we need to focus more on getting to locations where we can do this without spending a lot of money and being interfered with. So the Prospera is an example. Panama, Argentina, these agencies or places in the world where we can go and demonstrate to smaller populations, perhaps, and use that as a lever. The United States, where we largely are talking about, has less than 5% of the world's population. And we're coming up with solutions which can grossly affect the survival from, say, cardiovascular disease. Now, why are we being brickwalled by the FDA? There are countries we can go to where we can show that this works, utilize that with social media to then bring the impact back into these countries that have the barriers. And I think that's really what we need to be doing. I think the funds are available. I think we need to better allocate them. And I would suggest that at my age, if you're not aware of the numbers, but when you're 81, 15% of the people in my age cohort will die this year. So I have a sense of immediacy. I have cardiovascular disease. Please let me have it.
I would like to pick back on
Yeah, perfect.
what he said.
We're a little bit tight on time. So I think if, Kelly, thank you for that. So if everybody could just say one last piece before we wrap up, that would be amazing. So.
And wise words. And that's decentralized ethos, right? It's not from the top down, but it's from the bottom up. Bitcoin did not ask for permission. Through adoption from the community, we gain, we practically, the tender, the currency was legitimized. So the same thing can happen with longevity, and the same thing can happen with infrastructure and building longevity infrastructure with tokens and our own finance.
Yeah. And what you're doing in that area and what you're doing, bring that community into it, which is where we need to be. We need to have the community direct the governments.
Yeah, that's that disruptive element that everybody wants, because the traditional route is going to be such a long road. Sebastian.
Sure. So, for the avoidance of doubt or clarity, our minimum check size, if you want to invest in HealthSpan Capital, is 5K. But for the founders out there, we invest a couple $100K on average. So get in touch with us if you're just launching a company. I also want to give a shout out to my Web3 friends. Happy to be involved with VitaDAO. And I just want to double down on the importance of getting early liquidity. So one of the advantages that the US capital market has over, say, European or rest of the world is that it's a pretty reliable way to take a company public, to IPO. And if we could get that sort of liquidity earlier in the biotech process, I think that's going to catalyze a lot more capital entry. So really bullish on VitaDAO. My Vita tokens have reflected that bullishness, credit to the team. And also about the urgency. Prosper is just one of several of these jurisdictions. If you want to know more about this movement, sometimes called the network state movement that Balaji has popularized, or competitive governance movement that Patri Friedman has popularized, or Nicholas Anzinger. So you can search those terms, and you should definitely join us in Vitalia this winter. And also, if you're new to the field and you want to get into it, join the Longevity Biotech Fellowship.
Okay, great. Mark, 30 seconds if you may.
About bottom line or?
Well, just a closing remark on your perspective on the investment scene.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's great that you have such a variety of approaches, and ultimately for me as an entrepreneur and investor, longevity is the most exciting field, because on the one side there's a tremendous, maybe still underestimated business opportunity, but I also think from an impact side, it's maybe the most impactful field where you can spend your time on. So if you combine that, I think that's why maybe most of us are here. It's definitely the most exciting place to be at the moment.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, it's an industry for life now, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
For all of us,
For
we're all
long
pretty
life.
committed. Michael, to finish us off?
Well, I'll keep it really, really short, but it's great to be part of this community, and thank you all for all your energy against it.
Great. Okay, wonderful. Well, guys, if you could thank the panel with us, that would be wonderful. Thank you.